1, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. 6, 7, 8, 9. Some folk have breakfast, but I don't mind until 10 or 12. Then I jump out to bed with a jerk, with a sleeping and thinking, eating and drinking. I ain't got no time for no work. I don't work for a living. I get along all right without. I don't toil all day, I suppose. It's because I'm not built that way. Some people work for love and say it's all sunshine again. But if I can't have sunshine without any work, I'd rather stay out in the rain.
My dad was a maintenance engineer, so we always had to have the holidays different to everybody else's because he had to be there to maintain the machinery in the mills, because that's what he did. So hence he was very good with his hands. He could do anything, metalwork, woodwork, anything. We had an awful lot in his childhood. Both my dad and my granddad on both sides made us toys. I had a doll's house and it had electric fitted light bulbs in, little switches in every room, carpeted and wallpapered, and I had a posh doll's house, me. Cots, blackboards and easels. Brother had a fort, a garage, all homemade. To one Christmas I wanted a record player. A Philips one, a portable one that all my friends had. Lynn didn't get a portable Philips record player. I got an old radiogram made into a small one. All handmade, but really, now as I'm older, I mean, that was made with love and kindness, weren't it? But I didn't think so at the time. It wasn't what I wanted.
I tell my kids about living in back-to-back houses, and they just laugh because it's just so far beyond their understanding. We lived in the front one, and back then, of course, when you lived in streets like that, all your neighbours were called Auntie and Uncle, and I think it was Auntie Enid and Uncle Horace lived behind us. They were very interesting characters. She was addicted to crosswords, and Uncle Horace always wore a cardigan, whatever the weather was like, and he taught himself Russian. I never knew why, but he taught himself Russian, which always impressed me. And he always kept the back garden. It was full of roses. That's the only thing he seemed to grow. And of course, you'd have to go down the rose garden, to the privy, to the outside toilet outside, which my mother and Auntie Enid, whatever she was called, Edna, I can't remember what it was. Anyway, and they used to scrub it alternately, and it was scrubbed within an inch of its life. And of course, and bathing took place in a tin bath, which we had in front of the fire. My mum used to put a clothes horse round it and put towels over it for privacy. And we had what was then called a cellar head kitchen, which was a small thing at the head of the cellar stairs. And we had a small geyser that heated the water. And when it was bath night, the kids would I'd go in first, and then mother, and then father would come when he came back from work. It all sounds very Dickensian, doesn't it? But it's not that long ago.
And then my mum, she worked in the mill most of the time that I remember. Again, very good with her hands, always knitting, sewing, baking. Hence all my grandmas as well were the same, knitting, crocheting, sewing. I mean, all my clothes were cardigans were all knitted, dresses were all made. didn't go to the shop and buy anything. It was always, you know, so always homemade, and probably really, again in hindsight, really nice, weren't it? You know, but didn't appreciate it at the time.
And we also, there's a couple in the street who were called Uncle Stanley, and I've forgotten her name, but she was a very small mouse woman. And I was never sure whether they were actually man and wife or brother and sister. And he used to smoke untipped cigarettes, woodbines they were called in them days, and two of his fingers were bright yellow. And his hair was white, and the front of his hair was yellow from the cigarettes. And he used to have an allotment, and people will pale at this story, but when we were a kid, he used to take us on the allotment, and now things would be completely different, but it was completely innocent. We used to go on his allotment, and we'd drink bottles of Ben Shaw's pop out of the bottle, which my mother never allowed. And the shed used to smell of tomatoes and old sacking and lawnmower oil and things like that. And he'd tell us ghost stories on long summer days. It was delightful. I think it was quite idyllic then.
Well, you could say to your mum, like when I lived up by the mill there, we were going up Wesending, which I spent a lot of time up Wesending, and just used to pinch a rope from somewhere, take it up Wesending, have a swing, and it used to last us for ages, didn't it, a piece of rope.
We always used to go to my grandma's because my mum was working in the 6 weeks holidays and school holidays and things, and I used to say, can I put your curlers in, Grandma? And she used to be sat outside in the lovely summers that we used to have, that we don't have anymore. And I used to say, can I put your curlers in? And she'd be sat there with a towel round her, and I'd get a jug and some water, and I'd wet her through and put these curlers in. So poor Grandma was my guinea pig from a very early age, really. So yes, it's just something I always wanted to do, yeah, so it must have just been in me, mustn't it?
The only thing I had were I used to have some ferrets, because we used to go ferreting, pop the ferret down the hole and cover one hole up, and then we'd bloody lose it and come back next day and it was sat there waiting for us. My mother always used to say when we were at the house on the back of the mill, them ferrets stink, and they did. And, I had an hamster. And when I used to come home from school, I used to sit and have my tea, and I used to get it out, and it used to sit on my knee and stuff like that, and then I used to put it back in cage. And this here day, I lost it. Must have got down off of my knee, and I couldn't find it nowhere. And I were heartbroken because 3 or 4 weeks, and I never found it, so I just presumed it had died, or someone had eaten it, or something like that. And just as you're going on Shady Road, there's a big house there, isn't there? Well, that used to be Binroad Co-op, and round the corner there's like a window, and that used to be the Co-op Butchers. So when I used to come home from school, I used to go see Butcher, and he used to give me some jobs to do, and then give me some free meat, and then I used to go home. And this here day when I went, he said, you know, we've had a funny thing today, we found a hamster upstairs in the corner. They used to sell corn up at Binroad Co-op. You see, have you seen this hamster? And I said, have you? He says, yeah. I said, I've lost one. So anyway, the day after, he says, I'll get it you tomorrow. So he fetched his hamster down, and it was like a bloody football. Its cheeks were out here, and it was fat and bloated. And it was my hamster. It must have come on the road and sneaked under roller shutter door and found its way to some corner, and it had lived in there for 3 or 4 weeks.